Hello, Mark. My name is Joy Li Chengsheng, and my student number is S04411015, and I'm a sophomore. I'm going to read a speech titled How to Revive a Neighborhood with Imagination, Beauty, and Art, and the speaker is Theaster. I'm a potter, which seems like a fairly humble vocation. I know a lot about pots. I spent about 50 years making them. One of the things that really excites me in my artistic practice and being trained as a potter is that you very quickly learn how to make great things out of nothing. That I spend a lot of time at my wheel with amount of clay trying stuff, and that the limitation of my capacity, my ability, was based on my hand and my imagination. That if I wanted to make a really nice bowl and I didn't know how to make a food yet, I would have to learn how to make a food. That the process of learning has been very, very helpful to my life. I feel like, as a potter, you also start to learn how to shape the world. There have been times in my artistic capacity that I want to reflect on other really important moments in the history of the U.S., the history of the world where tough things happen. But how do you talk about tough ideas without separating people from the content? Could I use art like this old discontinued fair house from Alabama to talk about the complexity of a moment of civil rights in the 60s? Is it possible to talk about my father and I do labor projects? My dad was a roofer, construction guy. He owned small business, and 80. He was ready to retire, and his tornado was my inheritance. No, a tornado doesn't sound like much of an inheritance. It wasn't. It was thinking, and it took a lot of space in my studio. And I asked my dad if he would be willing to make some art with me, if we could reimagine this kind of nothing material as something very special, and by elevating the material at my dad's scale, could we start to think about tar just like clay in a new way, shaping it differently, helping us to imagine what was possible? After clay, I was then kind of turned on to lots of different kinds of material, and my studio grew a lot because I thought, well, it's not really about the material, it's about our capacity to shape things. I became more and more interested in ideas and more things that were happening just outside my studio. Just to give you a little bit of context, I live in Chicago. I live on the south side now, on the west sider. For those of you who are not Chicago, that won't mean anything. But if I didn't mention that I was a west sider, there would be a lot of people in the city that would be very upset. The neighborhood that I live in is Grand Crossing. It's a neighborhood that has seen better days. It is not a gated community by far. There is lots of abandonment in my neighborhood. And while I was kind of busy making pot and busy making art and having a good art career, there was all of this stuff that was happening just outside my studio. All of us know about falling house market and the challenges of blight. And I feel like we talk about it with some of our city more than others. But I think a lot of our US city and beyond have the challenge of blight, abandoned building that people no longer know what to do anything with. And so I thought, Is there a way that I could start to think about this building as an extension or an expansion of my artistic practice, and that if I was thinking along with other creative, architect, engineer, real estate finance people, that us together might be able to kind of think in more complicated way about the reshaping of city. And so I bought a building. The building was really affordable. When checking out, we made it as beautiful as we could, to try to just get some activity happening on my block. Once I bought this building for about $80,000, I didn't have any money left, so I started sweeping the building as a kind of performance. These performers are, and people would come over, and I would start sweeping because the broom was free and sweeping was free. It worked out. Laughter. But we would use the building then to stage exhibition, small diner, and we found that the building on my block, Dorchester, we now refer to the block as Dorchester Project, that in the way the building became a kind of gathering site for lots of different kinds of activity. We turned the building into what we could now the Orchard House. The Orchard House would do all of these amazing things. Very significant people in the city and beyond would find themselves in the middle of the hood. And that's when I feel like maybe there was a relationship between my history with clay and this new thing that was starting to develop. That we were slowly starting to reshape how people imagine the south side of the city. One house turned into a few houses, and we always try to suggest that not only is creating a beautiful vessel important, but the context of what happened in those buildings is also very important. So we were not only thinking about development, but we were thinking about a program, thinking about the kind of connection that could happen between one house and another, between one neighbor and another. This building became what we call the listening house, and it has a collection of discarded books from the Johnson Publishing Corporation, and all those books from an old bookstore that was going out of business. I was actually just wanting to activate this building as much as I could with whatever and whoever would join me. In Chicago, there's an amazing building stock. This building, which had been the former craft house on the block, and when the building became abandoned, it became a great opportunity to really imagine what else could happen there. So this space we converted into what we call Black Cinema House. Black Cinema House was an opportunity in the hood to screen film that were important and relevant to the folk who lived around me. That if we want to shoot an old Melvin Vance Peoples film, we could. If we wanted to show car wash, we could. That would be awesome. The building would soon outgrow, and we'd have to move to a larger space. Black Cinema House, which was made from just a small piece of clay, had to grow into a much larger piece of clay, which is now my studio. What I realized was that for those of you who are zoning junkie, that some of the things that I was doing in this building that had been left behind, they were not the use by which the buildings were built, and that There are city policies that say, hey, a house that is residential needs to stay residential. But what do you do in neighborhood when isn't nobody interested in living there? That the people who have the means to live had already left. What do we do with this abandoned building? And so I was trying to wet them up using culture. We found that was so exciting for folk, and people were so responsive to the work that we have to then find bigger building. By the time we found bigger building, there was, in part, the resource necessary to think about those things. In this band that we called the art band, it was in pretty bad shape. There was about 6 feet of standing water. It was a difficult project to finance, because Ben wasn't interested in the neighborhood, because people wasn't interested in the neighborhood, because nothing had happened there. It was dirt, it was nothing, it was nowhere. And so we just started imagining what else could happen in this building. Applause. And so now that the rumor of my blog has spread, and lots of people are starting to visit, we found that the bank can now be a center for exhibition, archive, music performance, and that there are people who are now interested in being adjacent to those buildings, because we brought some heat, that we kind of made a fire. One of the archers that we will have there is this Johnson Publish Corporation. We also started to collect memorabilia from American history, from people who live or have lived in that neighborhood. Some of these images are the great images of black people, kind of history of very challenging content. And well better than a neighborhood with young people who are constantly asking themselves about their identity, to talk about some of the complexity of race and class. In some way, the band represents a hub, that we are trying to create a pretty hardcore node of cultural activity, and that if we could start to make multiple hubs and connect some cool green stuff around there, the building that we purchased and rehab, which is now around 16 or 17 units, that if we could land miniature Brazil on top of that, and connect this building by a beautiful green belt, applause, that this place, where people never wanted to be, would become an important destination for folk from all over the country and world. In some way, it feels very much like an portal, that we tackle the things that are not our will. We try with the scale that we have to think about the next bowl that I want to make, and it went from a bowl to a singular house, to a block to a neighborhood, to a cultural district, to think about the city. And at every point, there was things that I don't know that I had to learn. I never learned so much about zoning load in my life. I never thought I have to, but as a result of that, I'm finding that there's not just room for my own artistic practice, there's room for a lot of other artistic practice. So people started asking us, well, sister, how are you going to go to the scale? And what's your sustainability plan? Laughter, applause. And what I found was that I couldn't explore myself. That wasn't necessary in cities like Akron, Ohio, and Detroit, Michigan, and Gary, in Indiana, is that there are people in those places who already believe in those places. They are already dying to make those places beautiful, and that often, those people who are passionate about a place are disconnected from the resources necessary to make cool things happen, or disconnected from a contingency of people that could help make things happen. So now we are starting to give advice around the country on how to start with what you got, how to start with the things that are in front of you, how to make something out of nothing, how to reshape your world, and the will or in your block or and the scale of the city. Thank you so much. Applause. Jane Cohen. Thank you. So I think many people watching this will be asking themselves the question you just raised in the end. How can they do this in their own city? You can explore yourself. Get up a few pages out of your playbook about what someone who is inspired about their city can do to take on projects like yours. Theaster guest. One of the things I found that's really important is giving thought to not just the kind of individual projects, like an old house, but what's the relationship between an old house, like a local school, a small bodega, and is there some kind of synergy between those things? Can you get those folk talking? I found that in cases where neighborhoods have failed, they still often have a pulse. How do you identify the pulse in their place, the passionate people, and then how to get for two who have been fighting, slugging for 20 years, re-energize about the place they live? And so someone has to do that work. If I were a traditional developer, I would be talking about building alone and then putting a for lease sign in the window. I think that you actually have to curate more than that. And there's a way in which you have to be mindful about what are the business that I want to grow here. And then, are there people who live in this place who want to grow this business with me? Because I think it's not just a cultural space or housing. There has to be the recreation of an economic core. So thinking about those things together feel right. JC. It's hard to get people to create the speak again when people have been slogging for 20 years. Are there any methods you found that can help break through? Theater guest. Yet, I think that now there are a lot of examples of folks who are doing amazing work, but those methods are sometimes lied. When the media is constantly saying that only violent things happen in a place, then based on your skill set and a particular context, what are the things that you can do in your neighborhood to kind of fly some of that? So I found that if you are a theater person, you have outdoor street theater festival. In some cases, we don't have the resource in certain neighborhoods to do this. There are a certain kind of places. But if we can then find ways of making sure that people who are local to a place, plus people who could be supportive of things that are happening locally, when those people get together, I think really amazing things can happen. Jane Cohen. So interesting. And how can you make sure that the project you are creating are actually for the advantages and not just for the sort of vegetarian indie movie crowd that might move into take advantage of them. Theater get right on, so I think there is where it starts to get into the thick week. June Cohen, let's go there. Theater guest. Right now, Grand Crossing is 99% black and least living, and we know that maybe who owns property in a place is different from who talks the street every day. So it's reasonable to say that Grand Crossing is already in the process of being something different than it is today. But are there ways to think about housing trust or land trust or mission-based development that start to project some of the space that happen? Because when you have 1,500 empty lots in the city, you want something to happen there, but you need entity. They are not just interested in the development piece, but entity that are interested in the stabilization piece. And I feel like often the developer piece is really motivated. And the other word of the kind neighborhood consciousness, that part doesn't live anymore. So how do you start to grow an important watchdog that ensure that the resources that are made available to new folk that are coming in are also distributed to folk who have lived in a place for a long time? June Cohen. This makes so much sense. One more question. You make such a compelling case for beauty and the importance of beauty and the arts. There would be others who would argue that funds would be better spent on the basic service for the disadvantaged. How do you combat that viewpoint or come against it? Theater guest. I believe that beauty is a basic service. Applause. Often what I have found is that when there are resources that have not been made available to certain under-resourced city or neighborhood or communities, that sometimes culture is the thing that helps to ignite, and that I can't do everything, but I think that there's a way in which if you could start with culture and get people kind of reinvest in their place, other kinds of adjacent amenities start to grow, and then people can make a demand that's a poetic demand and a political demand that are necessary to weather their city. They also become very poetic. June Cohen. It makes perfect sense to me, sister. Thank you so much for being here with us today. Thank you, sister guest. Applause.